Imagine a world where the games we play are no longer static experiences trapped within the confines of a disc or a digital download. Instead, envision a reality where the digital landscapes build themselves while you play, shifting and evolving in response to your every move. We have long lived in an era of predefined boundaries, where every quest, every mountain, and every line of dialogue was meticulously handcrafted by thousands of developers over the span of many years. But that traditional world is rapidly fading. We are entering a new digital frontier where the line between the creator and the creation is beginning to blur. This isn't just an incremental update to our graphics or our processing power. It is the dawn of an era where games are dreamed into existence by an intelligence that never sleeps. At the heart of this seismic shift is Google Gemini. Most people recognize it merely as a sophisticated chatbot, a tool for answering questions or drafting basic documents. But this is a profound misunderstanding of the immense power lurking beneath the surface. Google Gemini is not just a participant in the conversation. It is the new engine of digital creation, developed by the visionary architects at Google DeepMind and the dedicated Gemini team. This technology represents a fundamental departure from everything we know about computing. It is the introduction of multimodal intelligence, a system that does not just process text, but can see, hear, and think across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It understands video, audio, and code all at once, allowing it to generate gaming environments that are coherent, reactive, and infinitely deep. The teams behind this revolution have moved beyond the traditional logic-based coding that has governed the industry for decades. In the past, every interaction required a specific line of code, an if-then statement that dictated how the world should behave. If you hit a wall, it stopped you. If you spoke to a character, they recited a script. Google Gemini replaces this rigid, fragile structure with a flexible neural foundation. This intelligence watches gameplay to learn the fundamental rules of physics and human interaction, essentially teaching itself how to build a world just by observing how one should function. It is a move from software that follows rules to an intelligence that understands context, intent, and nuance. This transition is happening right now. In the present moment, we are seeing the first breakthroughs in real-time generative models that can craft assets and logic on the fly. This shift is moving from massive distant cloud servers directly into your local console and your home PC. The intelligence war is replacing the hardware wars of the past. It no longer matters quite as much if you have the latest teraflop-heavy console if your game lacks the intelligence to populate that power with meaningful living content. The focus of the industry is pivotally shifting toward the long context window, the AI's ability to remember your specific choices over hundreds of hours and weave them into a persistent living narrative that belongs only to you. But why is this change so necessary? Because traditional game development has hit a wall. The old way of making games is too slow, too expensive, and ultimately unsustainable for the modern market. When a modern AAA title takes 5 years and over $200 million to produce, the risks become so high that innovation is often sacrificed for safety. This is the human bottleneck. Developers are exhausted by the grind, and players are tired of open worlds that feel empty and repetitive after the first 20 hours. AI is the solution to this problem, offering a path to infinite content without the crushing overhead of traditional studios. It allows a single teenager with a vision to match the output of a global corporation, democratizing the act of creation for everyone. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We are standing at the edge of a new world, and your voice is part of the story we are telling today. As we look toward this horizon, we have to ask ourselves a daunting question. Are we truly ready for games that think for themselves? Most players assume that AI is simply a tool for making non-player characters more interesting, but that is a narrow view. The insight we must embrace is that Gemini is actually rewriting the physics of digital reality. It isn't just populating worlds, it is inventing them. We are no longer just playing within a box designed by humans. We are stepping into a collaborative hallucination powered by the most advanced intelligence ever created. The rules are changing, the old foundations are crumbling, and the game is just beginning. To understand Google Gemini, we must first look back at the rigid architecture of the past. For decades, video games were built like clockwork mechanisms. Every tiny gear and every lever had to be meticulously filed and fitted by hand. This was the era of the scripted path. Developers spent thousands of hours writing lines of code to handle every possible eventuality. If a player opened a door, a specific animation played. If they spoke to a character, a pre-written text box appeared. This was a world of logic-based coding, where the universe only existed in the way programmers had explicitly commanded it to. It was a fragile illusion of static corridors and invisible walls that defined our childhoods. As technology advanced, we transitioned into the age of the modern open world. We saw maps that stretched for miles, filled with thousands of activities. Yet, despite the scale, a strange emptiness began to permeate these digital landscapes. Players started to notice the patterns. After 20 hours in a vast sandbox that once seemed endless, the repetition becomes visible. The same voice actors play every shopkeeper, and the same recycled animations appear. The world feels less like a living place and more like a high-fidelity museum. You can look, but you cannot truly change the exhibit. These games feel hollow because they are bound by the limitations of human production. A team can only create so much handcrafted content before the entire human-led project collapses. There was a moment where we thought we had found the answer in procedural generation. Games like No Man's Sky promised us trillions of planets, generated by algorithms. This was the first true step toward infinite worlds, a glimpse into a future where the machine did the heavy lifting. However, these early attempts lacked the spark. While the terrain was infinite, it often felt soulless. Mathematics could create a mountain, but it could not create a compelling story. It could generate a creature, but it could not give that creature a purpose. This era proved that while math could build the house, it could not make it a home. This is the gap between scale and human creative meaning. Today, the cost of bridging that gap is becoming astronomical. Traditional game development, the antagonist, has become a victim of its own success. To produce a modern AAA masterpiece now requires a budget exceeding $200 million and a development cycle of 5 years. In that half-decade, technology changes and teams burn out. This high-stakes environment kills creativity, forcing massive global studios to rely on safe sequels to recoup their massive investments. The old way is fundamentally broken. It is here that Google Gemini enters the frame, not as a simple tool, but as a total replacement for the old foundation of digital design. The era of the human bottleneck is finally ending now. Gemini represents a shift from logic-based coding to neural-based world building. Instead of a developer telling the computer how a tree should look, the AI is fed the concept of a forest and dreams it into reality. It understands the relationship between light and physics because it has observed them across billions of data points. This visual evolution is staggering. We are moving from 8-bit pixels of the 80s into a world of AI upscaled photorealism, where the computer understands how rain should pool on asphalt. It is no longer about rendering polygons, it is about the AI simulating the very essence of existence. The shift changes the speed of creation from long years to mere minutes. This shift is the heart of the new intelligence war. For years, the industry was defined by hardware wars between giants like PlayStation and Xbox. Who had the faster GPU? In the era of Google Gemini, those questions are becoming secondary. Console power is nothing without model intelligence. The new frontier is not measured in teraflops, but in the complexity of the neural network and the depth of the long context window. We are witnessing the replacement of the traditional game engine with a living intelligence that learns as it creates. This is a complete overthrow of the regime, paving the glorious way for worlds that finally feel alive and responsive for every single player around the entire digital world. To grasp the sheer magnitude of this evolution, we must define what multimodality means within the digital nervous system of Google Gemini. It is the ability to see, think, and create in a singular unified loop. In the old world, a game engine was a fragmented collection of separate systems. Gemini collapses these boundaries. When it sees, it possesses a visual intelligence that rivals our own, understanding the context of every frame. It can watch a video of a city and instinctively comprehend social dynamics and the flow of traffic. This serves as its primary classroom. By observing countless hours of gameplay, Gemini learns the rules of interaction that human programmers used to spend years defining. It grasps weight and friction not through mathematical formulas, but through observation. It knows that a heavy object must fall faster than a feather, because it has seen it 1,000 times across 1 billion frames of reference. This visual foundation allows the AI to simulate gravity with an organic fluidness that logic-based coding could never achieve in a static environment. Beyond sight, Gemini exhibits a coding edge that transforms it from a tool into a collaborator. It can write and debug complex C++ and Python scripts in seconds. For a developer, adding a new mechanic, like a dynamic weather system, might take weeks. For Gemini, it is a task of moments. It analyzes millions of lines of code, identifies the perfect injection points, and executes the change without breaking the architecture. This is about the democratization of complexity across the digital frontier. Even the most ambitious ideas are now within reach. The AI functions as a bridge between imagination and binary reality, translating spoken commands into functional, optimized code. It allows for the rapid prototyping of features that traditionally require a team of 30 engineers. For the independent creator, this is the ultimate equalizer in the current industry, allowing vision to outweigh resources. The generative power extends into the ground the player walks upon. Environments can now be conjured from simple prompts. Imagine a creator stating, "Create a Gothic cathedral in a bioluminescent jungle," and watching the AI weave 3D textures and stone carvings into existence in real time. This is the death of the static asset. No longer are worlds limited by storage. They are limited only by what the AI dreams. Gemini handles the heavy lifting of 3D modeling and lighting, allowing for a level of detail that would be impossible for human teams to maintain. It builds the architecture and the atmosphere simultaneously, ensuring that every leaf and brick feels part of a coherent reality. This removes the human bottleneck, allowing a single teenager to match the output of a global studio. Perhaps the most revolutionary aspect is Gemini's mastery of the long context window. In gaming, memory is everything. In traditional titles, the world's memory is shallow, often forgetting your actions once you leave a zone. Gemini changes this. It maintains a massive context window that remembers player choices, dialogue, and behavioral patterns over hundreds of hours of gameplay. If you spared a character in the first hour, the AI understands how that choice ripples through the emotional fabric of the story 80 hours later. This creates a depth that feels personal. The world doesn't just react to you, it remembers you. Evolving its story beats based on the specific history you have written with your actions. This memory space becomes a living record, ensuring that no two players ever experience the same timeline. This intelligence is further enhanced by real-time adaptation through Vision AI. By analyzing the player's reactions through input speed or camera-based facial recognition, the game can sense emotional states like frustration or excitement. If the AI detects a challenge is becoming monotonous, it can subtly shift the environment or adjust the enemy's tactics on the fly. It is a game that breathes in rhythm with the player. We have already seen the proof in case studies where AI models generated playable levels of classic games by looking at screenshots. The AI was simulating the logic based on visual patterns without pre-existing game code. This is where it gets interesting. The AI is now teaching itself how to make games better than humans ever could, creating a cycle of exponential improvement that leaves the old ways and the traditional developers far behind in this new intelligence war. For decades, the NPCs in our digital worlds were nothing more than elaborate puppets. They stood in fixed locations, repeating the same lines of dialogue, trapped in loops of pre-recorded audio. You would approach a guard, press a button, and watch as they cycled through a predictable dialogue tree. These interactions were the primary bottleneck of immersion. No matter how beautiful the world looked, the inhabitants were hollow. Traditional game development was a world of rigid boundaries and entirely predictable outcomes where every interaction had to be manually written. If a player did something unexpected, the NPC would simply break or revert to a generic default state. The soul was missing because the system lacked the internal capacity for true spontaneity. Google Gemini changes the fundamental nature of these digital citizens. Instead of a script, each character is endowed with a neural brain fueled by multimodal intelligence. These characters possess their own memories, goals, and distinct personalities that persist. Utilizing the long context window, an intelligent NPC in a Gemini-powered world remembers if you were rude to them. They might refuse to trade with you, or they might gossip about your behavior in a neighboring village. They aren't just reacting to a line of code. They are processing the complex context of the player's history to build a persistent and evolving reputation. This creates a living social fabric where the digital frontier finally feels populated by sentient entities rather than static obstacles. This evolution is not merely cognitive, but but sensory. Traditionally, giving a character a voice required expensive studio time and thousands of files. Gemini removes this massive barrier through real-time voice synthesis, using the same neural foundations that allow it to understand text. Gemini can generate emotive, high-fidelity speech for any character on the fly. A merchant doesn't just say a line, they say it with a rasp if it is cold outside, or with fear if they see the player carrying a legendary weapon. This synthesis allows for infinite variety and emotional resonance, ensuring that every inhabitant sounds unique and realistic, eliminating the immersion-breaking repetition that has plagued gaming since its inception. This intelligence naturally flows into the concept of the quest. In the old regime, missions were static chores designed months before the player saw them. With Gemini, the quest is an emergent property of the world state. If a village is running low on resources because the player blocked a trade route, the AI generates a mission to solve that problem. The goals are not predefined, they are logical responses to the environment. No two players will ever have the exact same journey because the AI is constantly generating new objectives based on the shifting balance of power. This is the birth of the infinite narrative, where the story is as deep as the player's own imagination. This leads to the chaos factor. When you give NPCs individual goals, they begin to interact in ways that even the architects at Google DeepMind couldn't predict. One group might form an alliance against a threat, or a shopkeeper might move to a new city because the player's actions made their current location unprofitable. These emergent behaviors create a sense of true life that persists beyond the immediate view. The game is no longer a scripted theater production, it is a complex ecosystem where systems collide and produce unexpected results. The player becomes a participant in a living history, witnessing events that are truly unique to their specific save file and their personal digital journey. To make this possible without sluggish delays, Gemini integrates with specialized gaming hardware. By leveraging cloud computing and local AI accelerators, the system reduces latency to near zero levels. The conversation feels natural because the processing happens in a blink. The player is no longer waiting. The intelligence is baked into the fabric of the engine. As we stand on the precipice, the experience of playing changes from passive consumption to an active relationship with a living being. But what happens to the people who used to write these stories? As the AI begins to master the art of the narrative, the very nature of human creativity in the industry is being challenged at its core, leaving many professionals to wonder if the writer's sharp pen is becoming obsolete. The collapse of traditional barriers is perhaps the most visible mark of this revolution. For decades, the industry was a closed loop, a walled garden where only those with massive capital and hundreds of employees could hope to compete. This was the era of the high-budget blockade, where the traditional game development model reigned supreme. But as Google Gemini steps into the role of the ultimate creative partner, we are witnessing the radical democratization of the digital frontier. A single teenager working from a bedroom with nothing more than a standard laptop and a connection to Gemini's neural network can now produce environments, character models, and complex game systems that rival the output of a Ubisoft or an Electronic Arts production. The power has shifted from the boardroom to the bedroom. By utilizing multimodal intelligence to generate 3D assets and logic on command, the independent creator is no longer limited by their lack of a 1,000-person staff. They are limited only by the scale of their own imagination, as the AI handles the heavy lifting of rendering, optimization, and bug fixing that once consumed years of human labor. This is the new era of the solo developer, where a single mind can command a digital army. However, this democratization comes with a cold, hard reality that is currently shaking the foundations of the global job market. The industry is facing a painful paradox. While it has never been easier to create, it has never been more difficult to maintain a traditional career path in the field. The heavy reliance on Gemini for automated quality assurance and asset generation has led to a wave of layoffs in sectors that were once considered the backbone of the industry. Traditional art roles, where hundreds of designers would spend months crafting the texture of a single city street, are being replaced by prompts that achieve the same result in seconds. Quality assurance testing, once a massive department of human players looking for glitches, is now performed by Gemini's Vision AI, which can play a game 1,000,000 times in an hour to find every possible point of failure. This efficiency is a double-edged sword, creating a lean, fast-paced environment while leaving thousands of specialized workers searching for their place in a world where their manual skills are suddenly redundant. It is a transition that prizes strategic thinking over mechanical execution. This shift in labor is directly tied to the dramatic reduction in development costs. The $200 million price tag of a modern AAA blockbuster is becoming a relic of a slower, more expensive age. When the AI can write the code, generate the sound, and build the world, the capital required to launch a top-tier title drops to indie levels. This economic shift is also collapsing the development cycle itself. We are moving away from the grueling 5-year wait for a sequel. In the era of intelligence, a 5-month development cycle is becoming the new standard. This speed allows studios to respond to player trends in real time, creating a landscape of infinite games. These are not static products sold on a disc, but living, breathing digital ecosystems that never truly end. They evolve every day, growing with the player, as the AI continues to generate new content, new land masses, and new storylines long after the initial launch. Consequently, the business model of gaming is undergoing a total transformation. The industry is moving away from the $70 one-time purchase and toward the living world subscription. Investors are no longer just looking for the next blockbuster hit. They are looking for the most robust AI integration. The economic consequences are clear as capital moves away from physical hardware companies and toward the platforms that house these massive neural networks. In this new intelligence war, the value of a console is determined not by its graphics processing power or its storage speed, but by how well it connects to the brain of Gemini. The hardware wars between the giants of the past are being overshadowed by a much larger battle for dominance in the field of generative intelligence. As one prominent industry figure recently noted, the engine of the future is not Unreal or Unity, it is intelligence. This new foundation is redefining what a game is, transforming everything. As the dust settles from the initial explosion of productivity, a deeper, more philosophical question begins to echo through the halls of the digital frontier. Where does the machine end and the art begin? This is no longer just a discussion about technical efficiency, it is a battle for the very soul of the medium. Critics and veterans of the industry are raising their voices, questioning whether a world generated by Google Gemini can ever truly be called art. The traditionalists argue that a game is more than just a collection of assets and optimized code. It is a manifestation of human intent, a specific vision carved out of personal experience, struggle, and cultural context. When Gemini synthesizes a landscape based on billions of data points, is it creating something new, or is it merely producing a high-fidelity statistical average of everything that has come before? This tension creates a growing divide between the modern player who craves infinite content and the purist who fears the loss of the human touch that once made the classics unforgettable. Compounding this philosophical debate is the looming shadow of a legal and ethical nightmare regarding copyright. The question of ownership has become a labyrinth with no clear exit. If an indie creator prompts Gemini to build a gothic horror world styled after the great painters of the 19th century, who actually owns the resulting masterpiece? Is it the creator who provided the creative spark? Is it the Google DeepMind team whose architects built the neural pathways? Or is it the countless original artists whose works were ingested during the AI training phase to teach it the meaning of light and shadow? Currently, the legal frameworks of the physical world are struggling to keep pace with the lightning speed of the digital one. The industry is watching closely as courtrooms become the new battleground, where the rights of human creators are pitted against the generative power of the machine, threatening to stall the very revolution that promised to liberate the creative process. Then there is the persistent risk of the machine's own fallibility, often referred to as the risk of hallucination. Because Gemini operates on complex probabilities rather than rigid logic gates, there are moments when the intelligence breaks the reality it was designed to uphold. A character might suddenly begin speaking in a forgotten language, or the physics of a room might invert, creating a disturbing, surreal nightmare that no developer ever intended. While these glitches can sometimes lead to humorous viral moments, they also pose a significant challenge for safety and moderation. In a living world that evolves in real time, how do you stop the AI from generating toxic interactions or biased narratives that could harm the player? The task of policing an infinite, ever-changing environment is a monumental hurdle, requiring a secondary layer of guardian AIs just to keep the primary intelligence within the bounds of human ethics and safety standards. Beyond the bugs and the legalities lies a more existential concern known as the hollow theory. This is the suspicion held by many seasoned players that AI-generated games, for all their visual splendor and infinite scale, lack a certain intangible weight or emotional resonance. They fear a future where games feel like high-quality filler, technically impressive but narratively empty. A human writer might place a specific item in a room to foreshadow a tragic ending 3 chapters later. Gemini, by contrast, might place it there simply because it fits the statistical pattern of the decor. This loss of specific, deliberate intent can make a world feel like a beautiful facade with nothing behind the curtain. The modern player may find themselves wandering through a galaxy of 1 billion planets, only to realize that every encounter feels like a generic remix of the last, lacking the spark of a unique human consciousness reaching out to connect with them. Globally, the response to this disruption is far from uniform, reflecting a world divided by its values. In Japan, where the heritage of artisan craftsmanship remains a pillar of game development, there is a cautious integration of Gemini, focusing on how AI can assist the human master rather than replace them entirely. In contrast, the European Union is moving towards strict transparency regulations, demanding that any AI-generated content be clearly labeled to protect the consumer's right to know the origin of their digital entertainment. Meanwhile, in the United States, the intelligence war is being fought with a focus on speed and market dominance, often at the expense of these ethical considerations. As these different philosophies collide, the digital frontier becomes a patchwork of regulated zones and wild frontiers, each grappling with the reality that the genie cannot be put back in the bottle. The excitement of the player is constantly being weighed against the deep-seated fear of the traditional developer, leaving the industry in a state of precarious balance. The long arc of gaming history has always been defined by the specific materials we use to build our dreams. We began with the flickering, primitive blocks of the arcade era, where imagination had to fill the vast gaps left by limited hardware. We moved into the vibrant, hand-drawn pixels of the 16-bit generation, a time of artistic precision and carefully managed constraints. Then came the polygons, the geometric building blocks that finally gave our digital worlds the weight of three-dimensional space, yet they remained rigid and static, tethered to the ground by the limitations of the human bottleneck. Today we are witnessing the most profound shift of all, the transition from polygons to intelligence. This is the moment where the medium of gaming stops being a series of pre-recorded instructions and starts becoming a living, thinking entity. Google Gemini is the catalyst for this metamorphosis, serving as the new engine that does not just render light and shadow, but understands the very essence of interaction and creation within the digital frontier. As we look toward the immediate horizon, the next 12 to 24 months will serve as the true testing ground for this revolution. We are already moving past the phase of technical demonstrations and entering the era of execution. The first fully AI-integrated titles are currently being forged in the neural laboratories of Google DeepMind and by forward-thinking developers across the globe. These will not be the traditional games we are used to, where AI is a peripheral feature added to a legacy framework. Instead, they will be experiences built from the ground up on generative models, where the world itself is manifested in real time based on the player's presence. In these upcoming titles, the environments will no longer be static sets waiting for a player to trigger a script. Instead, they will be dynamic ecosystems where the geography, the weather, and the social structures of the inhabitants evolve in response to every choice made by the modern player. This evolution signals a future where gaming is no longer just a hobby or a form of entertainment. It is becoming a personalized alternate reality. The feedback loop between Google Gemini and the user is creating a level of immersion that was previously thought impossible. Imagine a game that does not just record your high score, but learns your fears, your curiosities, and your unique sense of wonder. If you are a player who finds beauty in quiet, desolate landscapes, Gemini will expand the horizon with hauntingly beautiful vistas that reflect that specific aesthetic. If you crave intense, high-stakes political intrigue, the AI will weave a web of NPCs with complex motivations and long-term memories, all designed to challenge your strategic mind. This is the ultimate democratization of storytelling, where the indie creator and the solo teenager have the tools to generate a cinematic universe that rivals the most expensive productions in history. However, this new reality brings us to a fundamental crossroad that demands our deepest reflection. We must ask ourselves the most important question of this new age. Would you play a game created entirely for you and only for you? There's a profound change in the social fabric of gaming when the experience becomes truly singular. For decades, gaming was a shared cultural touchstone because we all faced the same challenges and saw the same endings. But in a world powered by Gemini, your journey is yours alone. The characters you meet and the legends you forge exist only within your specific instance of the neural network. Does this absolute personalization make the experience more meaningful, or does it strip away the communal joy of shared discovery? The answer to that question will define the next decade of digital culture. The sense of urgency surrounding this shift cannot be overstated. The industry as we once knew it is effectively over. The rules have been rewritten while the old guard was still debating the resolution of textures. The intelligence war has moved the goalposts so far that those who are not integrating these generative models will soon find themselves speaking a dead language. Google Gemini has not just improved the way games are made, it has redefined what a game is. The future of gaming isn't coming, it's already here.